You are listening to Healing with Haley, episode 49, Why I Became a Homesteader, a conversation with Alaynia.
Welcome to Healing with Haley. I'm your coach, Haley Kirk. On this podcast, we dive into ways to heal, embrace, and truly love our lives. Here's my belief. So much of our suffering comes from what we believe. I'm here to help you understand your mind and question those thoughts to start your healing journey. Ready to get started? Let's go. Welcome, you guys. I have a very special guest, my lovely friend, Alaynia Winter. Welcome, my love.
Hi, Haley. I'm so thankful that you invited me to your podcast.
Of course. So I wanted to bring Alaynia on here because she's not only one of my really, really good friends that is in Utah, but she has done this super cool thing called homesteading, which I'm obsessed with the idea of. And I wanted her to talk about why she did it, what's been her experience, because she just knows so many things. So first off, we should tell people how we met.
I don't remember how we met. Did
It was,
we just keep dancing?
it was, I think one of our dance friends, Giovanni, he was bringing us to do like a salsa like team or something like that. Remember that?
That feels like so long ago. Oh my
So long
God.
ago. Yeah, it's probably a good like 7, 8 years ago.
Time flies.
I know. But yeah, I think it's so fun that we connected that way. Oh, and then we also were gonna do like a, remember I recruited you to do like a,
Did that choreography with that
yeah.
guys, and that was actually right when I bought my property and I moved, like right in the middle of it.
Yeah, you did. That's right. And you were like, there's no way I could make that drive to just come for rehearsal. I'm like,
For
I
rehearsals.
don't blame you.
But it was so fun, and I was sad that I didn't get to actually perform it because I've never actually performed anything ever. And so that was kind of
Yeah.
like out of my comfort zone. But I would only do something like that with you because
Oh.
normally I would never, I'm not a performer. I don't like being on stage.
Whatever. Alaynia is such a good dancer. Um, so tell us. So you bought the
Sorry
property.
to interrupt you. If you
Yeah.
guys, you might need this for the podcast. If you're hearing weird sounds, I have a baby pig running around my house right now, and she is literally chewing on my foot. So if you
I'm obsessed. The life of a homesteader in real life, in real time.
just wanted your viewers to know what that sound was, I'm not making weird sounds, my fault.
Identify as a pig.
Oh my God. No.
Yeah. So you bought the property. So rewind. What is the reason you wanted to do homesteading? Tell us the origin story of this.
So I think I've always kind of been interested in old-fashioned things. Like I
Yeah.
just always have, well, and I've grown up in Utah my whole life, and like a big part of Utah culture, at least it used to be, like homesteading is pretty ingrained into Utah culture. Like I remember growing up and like ladies in the neighborhood would bring over sourdough starter. That was just like a normal thing that your mom's friends would bring over sourdough starter, or like canning with my mom. Like we all
Fun.
come from pioneer, well, not all of us, but I mean my family, we have a lot of pioneer ancestry, so it's just kind of was
Cool.
I think I've always had elements of that growing up, so it just
Yeah.
seemed no, elements of that was always just normal to me. Like my mom always made bread and canned and stuff. So but I mean we lived suburban life. So
Mhm.
there's that aspect. I've always been interested in old-fashioned hobbies. And then I think it really solidified with me like around COVID. I think
Yeah.
to a lot of people, it's you couldn't buy toilet paper at the store. Um, we had that earthquake, and it felt like the world was ending, where everyone was freaking out.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that earthquake. Yeah. Yeah, that was scary.
Yeah, grocery stores were empty, and so then when things happen in the world that are so out of your control and you feel so insignificant, you really realize why homesteading and prepping exists in the first place.
Mm.
And so it kind of hit home. That kind of brought me back rapid fire, I would say, to some of my core
Mhm.
values. So
Yeah.
probably 2020 kind of.
Catalyst for everything. So 2020, the COVID 2020 happens. What am I saying? COVID-19 happens, and then what?
So, well, my husband and I had already been kind of looking for property for like a year or so. So backstory. So my husband is an immigrant from Mexico, and when we met, you know my husband. Haley knows
I
my
love
husband.
him. Yeah, girl. He's a
Um,
salsero to the T.
yes. We also met dancing. But
Yeah.
which is funny because my husband is like super city boy from like the biggest city, not the biggest city, but from a big city in Mexico.
Yeah.
Like, didn't have a backyard, never had been camping, and he meets like the most Utah girl you can meet. And so it's so funny. That could be another, I could, anyway.
That's so cute. I
He's
love
been a
that.
great sport with all of this. I think I've successfully
Yeah,
converted him in a lot of ways.
I agree.
What was I saying? Yes. Um,
So you
and
guys were
then
looking for
what? So we
property.
had been looking for at properties kind of passively, but he was so things just kind of aligned in our life, and it really was from God. Like we had because when we met, I was dirt poor. I was in college. My husband, um, Lauro was we were working on getting his green card like during our marriage, and he was working at Chick-fil-A, and it was honestly just a miracle that we even qualified. I got a job offer at Salt Lake Community College, and within that month we applied for a home loan because I was like, thank God we can try to apply for houses now. And so we barely
Wow.
qualified for this home loan. I mean, by the skin of our teeth.
Ah, yeah.
And because he was still working at Chick-fil-A, and all of it just worked out perfectly. And so we were looking for homes in the midst of kind of that housing explosion, which was crazy in 2020. And we ended up getting our home. I think we closed on it in August of 2020.
Mhm.
And it's really, I would consider like we're like a little suburban farm.
Okay.
We're in kind of a country. We live in kind of a more rural part of Utah, but it's still it was kind of a happy medium for my husband and I because I mean we're 20 minutes from Walmart. So
Nice. Oh, cool. Yeah.
we're it's a good middle ground for us.
Yeah. So, okay. So you qualify for the property,
Mhm.
and in August, then what?
So we closed on our home in August and moved in, and the plan always for me was to just be able to get a little bit of independence. I've always wanted to, I mean, I would go off grid if I could. I know a lot of people say they would go off grid. Like I was made to go off grid. I'm
Wow.
not like my dad is such a big outdoorsman, and I was raised in such like an outdoors lifestyle, like hunting and fishing and camping. And
Cool.
I've always like that's just always been my element, my happy
Yeah.
place. So uh, I would love to even go further down this lifestyle, but compromise, right? Marriage is compromise.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, so the plan was we bought our home, and we're on an acre, which isn't a whole lot, but I think it's great for like I think a lot of people think that in order to homestead you need to be on like 40 acres
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of nowhere. And so I think you can homestead and start with what you have where you
Yeah.
are.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
because I even had started doing things when I was living in an apartment with my husband, like going to school. Like I've had a worm farm for 10 years. I've raised like compost worms. I had a little patio that was 10 feet long that I grew tomatoes, and like you can start with
Yeah.
what you have. So uh, I'm getting a little sidetracked, but I'm not sure. I
I
don't even
love that. So wait, so okay, this is so interesting. So for 10 years, you were doing worm harvesting?
this sounds like I had like went to Amazon and bought a worm farm and like
This
okay,
is
let
so
me
cool. I've never heard of this before. Like, keep going. I'm so
so
interested.
have you heard of like red crawler worms?
No.
So there's a certain kind of worm, and so there's night crawlers like all the different earthworms that just kind of naturally grow, but there's it's not red crawlers, red wigglers. They're called red wigglers. And they're a special kind of worm that create compost. Like that, it's actually one of the most nutrient dense compost that you can ever do for your plants.
The
Uh,
red worms.
the red wiggler worms, yeah. So you can, I mean, and I just started in little like plastic 20-gallon bins. So you
Ooh.
can, I like found the guy, the worm dealer, and bought some worms from him. And,
It's like a drug deal, but
yeah,
with like
we gave me the
homesteading.
cash. And
This is so funny.
but
So,
there's a
so
certain type of
really
worm. So
quick.
I started, oh, sorry.
So if you have red worms, Because tell us about composting. Like, what is composting? Like, for people who are like me that are like, "Pff, I have no idea what that is." It's kind of like using your raw food, like old banana or a apple core, and putting it in dirt. Is that kind of like, what is that?
Yeah, yeah. So composting is just the process of decomposing uh, like vegetable matter, fruit, just any like decayed matter. It's usually like a mixture of nitrogen, like different natural materials, and you have to have kind of like a mix of browns and greens, which is a whole other thing. But and it just creates healthy. That's what creates soil, and it creates plant food. So like a good place to start with gardening is just to kind of research soil. And so, I mean, you can compost with your kitchen scraps. It needs nitrogen, it needs a little bit of moisture, and it needs oxygen and the nutrients. So it just basically decomposes the nutrients over time and creates like that. Have you ever seen like just that really, it smells so good. It's just that dark, rich soil that like when you think of soil, that just kind of loamy, dark, earthy soil, that's usually
Such
compost.
a city girl. I can't even relate with this. Like, this stinks. I'm like, I want to know what that smells like.
It smells so good. If I could make a candle out of that, like if I could just roll in it
Ooh.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Like, I mean,
it's
I
just
feel
healthy soil.
like coffee soil.
Healthy soil.
Oh,
You can
healthy
put
soil.
coffee in your compost too. Like coffee
I've
grounds
heard
is
of
a really good
that.
source of nitrogen.
Ooh, that's so interesting. And so, because I've heard that like our soil in America is pretty nutrient, like lacking in nutrients.
Yeah, so then like unfortunately if you it's careful, it's a slippery slope because the more you research things, it can get depressing. But
Oh,
but like over the years, just because of all the monocropping and like
the
large
tilling of
farms,
the earth, right? Like they till too much when it used to be cows tilling, right?
yeah, that's a part of it too, because you're breaking up the microbiome of the soil. Like that's the earth, all the bugs and the microorganisms are doing their job, and the root systems should be doing their job to think. So every time you do that, you're like disrupting that whole ecosystem under the soil. And also monocropping, so like planting the same thing year after year, and instead of like rotating crops, because there's some crops that can fix nitrogen, there's some different crops take certain things out of the soil and different
Uh-huh.
crops put certain things in. So that's why
So
so
interesting.
if a farmer, but it's kind of, I think farmers are between a rock and a hard place because if your cash crop is corn, you're expected to plant corn every year. And if you're planting corn for 70 years on a plot of land, your soil is going to become so devoid of nutrients and it's going to become unhealthy. So what do? You buy chemical fertilizer to try to prop up that soil. So the more chemicals you're having to pump into your soil. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle.
That's so wild. Oh man. So this is so cool. Okay, so going back to the story of homesteading. So you guys bought the plot of land. You were always kind of homesteading. You don't really need a big lots of acres of land to to homestead. Composting is falls under the umbrella of homesteading.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
How do you define homesteading? Like how would you define it?
Oh my gosh. Should have Googled this before I came. How would I
Kind of
define?
like living self-sustainably? Is that kind of
I would say living in the most self-sustainable way that you can. And
hmm.
if that's raising your own animals or growing your own food, for a lot of people, it just means gardening. Having a couple chickens, whatever that means to you, I guess. But I would definitely say food independence and autonomy is a big part of it.
Oh wow. That's so cool. I love the idea. I love the idea of buying food that has been from homestead. I think for me, it's just like at this point in my life, it's very overwhelming the idea of like taking care of a garden. I tried growing a strawberry garden, like those easy grow kits from Target.
Yeah.
I messed that one up and it was like guaranteed to grow. And I was like, yo, and I was really excited because I saw it like bud and everything. I was like taking care of it every day. And then I just like messed up and I was like, ugh.
To be fair, growing strawberries from seed is kind of hard. So kudos to you for
Oh,
getting
thank you.
going. Like it's not easy growing from
It's
seed.
not. It took like 2 months just to get a little thing. And I was like, I'm so excited.
Yeah, you
But
gotta baby those little seedlings. They need a grow light and you need to baby those things every day. And yeah.
yeah, I sprayed those little things twice a day. I was like, it's like hard work. Okay, so then, okay, so you bought the plot of land, and then what did you guys like decide to do with it?
So so we bought the plot of land and I immediately became pregnant. So that kind of put a hitch on on our giddy up.
Yeah.
But
Oh
but
man.
but besides the fact that I was doing all this while pregnant, it's my first year. So we bought a house. I was pregnant a month later. So I was having terrible morning sickness and working my little hiney off on this yard, which was an acre of which half of it was grass. I would say about half of our acre is just grass. Not anymore. We're still
Mm-hmm.
replacing it with like food, like a food forest and things like that, but
Mm-hmm.
an animal pasture. But half acre of grass is no joke to maintain. And so it was almost a full-time job. And then the other half was a pasture that had been they had just let completely become overgrown with puncture weed, and it was instant overwhelm, like with the grass and then the half acre of just these terrible. I don't know if you know what goat heads are. Or if
Nope.
you've never seen goat heads, in Spanish they're called torritos because they look like little heads, like little cow heads, because they're basically they're a weed that is incredibly invasive, incredibly hardy, and they grow these like sharp little burrs. But the like if you step on a goat head, I don't think you I'd rather have unmedicated home birth than it's the worst pain. And
Go.
they were all over my yard. I mean, they invaded
Oh, I've seen those. I know exactly what you're talking about. I hate.
our yard was a weedy mess, and I remember going out there. We rented tractors. I went
Mm.
out there by hand, just like me against the world, hacking at these vines. And it took us a good 6 months to get the weeds under control. Um, I have to say,
No,
like blood,
that's
sweat, and tears.
wild.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Oh, yeah,
And
geez, these look insane. I hate those things. I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, they're bad. And that wasn't the only weed. There was a lot. So we had to get the soil under control. And
Mhm.
then I ended up planting a cover crop over the pasture, which is basically like nitrogen fixing. I did like winter rye, some different cover crop. I don't remember all at what I think field peas. I planted a bunch of, and then I did kind of like a pasture mix for horses. I ended up
Mhm.
planting. Oh, so we ended up having to till because the soil was just so weedy at that point. So we did a full deep plow, like a foot long flip of the soil. I'm like, I'm gonna start a new microbiome. Like I'm just gonna start over. And so we planted all these beneficial plants, and now we have a beautiful pasture. Uh, But that was the first step. It was just kind of getting our yard under control. And then I also impulsively bought some goats. So we already had the chickens. I had the chickens in the apartment.
Ah, that's hilarious. I
They were
love
chicks
it.
still, but
They were chicks. They were little baby chicks. That is so fun. So, okay. So before you had your home, you had chickens in your apartment.
chicks.
Chicks.
Adult chickens, yeah.
That is hilarious. And so, because one chick produces one egg a day, right? Like a
One,
grown.
one, it depends on the breed of chicken. Yeah. So I'll say
Oh,
I bought the chicks after we closed on our house, or like when we were in the process of closing on our house because I was excited to move. So it's not like was living with chickens in an apartment it was like 2 weeks before we moved. But
that's hilarious.
don't do that. Don't ever do that. I would not recommend doing things that way, just for your listeners. Wait until you have your land for the love of God. Like, don't.
That's so cute. I feel like that tells me so much about your like your passion and your zest for homesteading. Like I love it so much. So,
Yeah, one chicken in general, they lay like there's heavy layer breeds that will lay like an egg a day. Some lay less. There's different breeds.
wow. So what about your breed? Does it breed one egg a day?
I have some. I have 14 chickens and 2 turkeys,
Oh,
breeding of turkeys. So they're all different breeds. They lay
all your
different.
chickens are all different breeds.
I have a couple. So I have a couple of. I have some Australorps. I have some black copper Morans, which lay like those really, really dark, almost look like chocolate eggs. I don't know if you can look that up. Yeah.
I am. This is so fun. Keep going. Oh, they're handsome.
Yeah, they're kind of pretty. Their feathers kind of are almost have like a translucent, like they'll change in the sun. They have
Pretty.
not the translucent.
Like a gloss. Like they're glossy.
And some from some eagles it'll look orange and some it'll look blue. Like
Ooh,
it'll
pretty.
I have a lot of different breeds that all lay. I have some that lay like kind of mossy green color, to some that lay blue eggs, some that lay green eggs, some that lay brown eggs, all the shades of brown.
So Dr. Seuss was telling the truth the whole time. There's green eggs in ham.
Yeah.
So in on the inside, does it look the same as like the eggs we like? Oh wow, that's so nuts. But I've noticed that like there's like even some pictures of like a homestead egg inside of it, and then like when you get a normal grocery store, and it's like the color of the yellow is so bright and deep and the ones here are kind of like a light pale yellow, the egg, and I'm just like, what are your thoughts on that? Is there like more nutrients? Is it what the chickens are eating? Like what's contributing to that?
Yeah, that's the main difference. So I think a lot of people think like, oh, if the brown eggs are healthier for you, but really white eggs can be just as healthy. It just depends on the diet and the lifestyle of the chicken. So
Mhm.
like the color of the egg doesn't really matter, but like you said, it's what the chicken is eating that matters. So you can definitely see like most of my eggs, you cut them up. Like I've eaten store-bought eggs a few times and I'm like, oh my gosh, these are like they're so pale. You don't realize until after, and even the taste, like they don't taste as good. It kind of
Wow.
just tastes like nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. So I didn't realize that until I had switched to getting my own eggs. And but there really is a difference. And so they're usually higher in all the different vitamins, like vitamin D, vitamin A, all the different and actually grass chickens that have kind of a mixture of like grass fed, like they're able to go out and eat and forage and eat bugs and stuff and higher protein diets. They'll have a little bit lower cholesterol. They'll have different kinds of fats in the egg or proteins. But yeah, it's just generally healthy. I say this is my motto, and plug your ears, vegans. But all animals should have uh, a good life, a good death, a good butcher, and a good chef. So
Oh, I like that. It's a little jingle. Say it
yeah,
again.
I think all animals should be able to do what they were born to do, which is like chickens were born to run around and eat bugs and forage for food and eat a variety of things. And what you asked me was like a really great segue into most people don't realize like the eggs that we're eating in the store and labels can be misleading sometimes too, because even though it
Hmm.
says cage free, that bird might have never seen the sunlight in its whole life.
Yeah, they're in those like big, it's like an open space, but they're crammed in with all the chickens and they like peck at each other, right? Because they're just so frustrated with all the like cluster of everyone.
Too close. A lot of times, yeah, the really big producers and yeah, they'll crowd them so much where it's just the poor chickens are pecking each other to death. But chickens are pretty brutal. They need space. They need space in order to be happy.
Yeah.
They have a pecking order, so yeah, they need space to be happy. I think all animals should be able to live how God designed them to live, the closest that they can. Obviously, we're farming them and we're using them for food to like feed our families and that's what they were for, but I think they need to be treated with dignity. And so so yeah, so I don't free range my birds anymore because they destroy my gardens. They
Little
scratch really.
speakers.
Yeah, they're really destructive, but I do give them a good space. They have a 24 by 12-foot pen and they have, and I feed them all the veggie scraps. They eat bugs. They things like that. But from the grocery store, eggs, they're actually, most chickens are fed a diet of like pure soy, like soy and corn is
Mm-hmm.
the cheapest way to feed industrial. operations because anything more than that, like if you're feeding them, if you, that's why eggs and people are like, oh, why are eggs so expensive? And it's like, well, why are they so cheap is the better question. Because
Mm,
if your food is, we've become so accustomed to cheap food, and I'm not saying that food needs to be
expensive.
so expensive that, but you do need to think about where people are cutting costs and where the quality of your food, like who's suffering, and it's probably the animals and us. So,
Oh.
yeah.
So, okay. So you have 14 chickens, two turkeys. Are those all considered your birds?
Yeah, that's all I have right now. I did raise meat. I did raise six turkeys last year and we ate them for Thanksgiving. I gave them to friends and family
That's
and butchered them, raised them myself, butchered them myself. And yeah, and
okay. We have to talk about that. Keep going. So you said you had goats and then you had to sell those or?
yeah, I decided goats are not the animal for me.
Oh, that's so the animal for me, what does that mean? Like the way their disposition is, their behavior, like what do you mean?
I think that they're really cute and they're
Mhm.
really fun and they're almost like the quintessential like when people first start getting into homesteading, I feel like it's like chickens and goats, right? That's kind
Yeah.
of the beginner homesteader kind of maybe the gateway animals is what I
So many drug references.
Yeah, why am I using so many drug
I
references
love
today?
it. I love it. It's hilarious.
But yeah, I did milk. I did have I started with just I didn't know that a whole lot, so I kind of just impulsively bought some like unregistered. They were supposed to be Nigerian dwarf goats. I think they were actually pygmy goats, which pygmy goats are actually for meat and they don't really produce any milk. So they were just literally a waste of like goats can be a money pit. I think if you're actually wanting I think any animal on your homestead needs to serve a purpose, or else you're just have a you have a pet. You know what I mean?
That's such an interesting, yeah, that makes sense. That makes so much sense. Oh my God, they're so cute. I'm
There's
literally looking at pictures. Ah! Pygmy, pygmy goats. How stinking cute. So their purpose is more for their meat.
Yeah, I think they're more a small meat goat. They don't really produce milk. I ended up getting a registered Nigerian dwarf goat, and she did produce a lot of milk. I
Okay.
milked her for like about a year, and she had a couple kids, a couple of, but uh, it just, and then I had a newborn, and other things going on, so I just decided to get out of goats. So I was like this, and it was fun. I would say if like and but milking really is a labor of love. Like you are milking those animals twice a day. So
Ah,
on
that's
top of that, I was being milked myself. I was breastfeeding and it was too much. So
too much. That's so much. Oh my God. Newborn and homesteading. What the F? Alaynia, you're like a super goddess woman. Oh my God. So, but at one point you had a pig, right? You had pigs?
I have pigs now. Yeah.
Oh, you
So
have pig. Okay, okay. So 14 goat or 14 chickens, two turkeys, and how many pigs?
I started with I got a kuni gilt, which gilt is the word for like a pig that hasn't given birth yet. So we all know like cows, right? A cow is like a female breed of the cow, but there's a heifer. A heifer is a cow that hasn't had babies yet. So they're
Also like a derogatory, right?
yeah, what
That's
a
where
heifer
that
like
comes
that's what a
from.
heifer is, yeah.
I had no idea. I'm learning so much. Oh my God.
But so a gilt is a female pig that hasn't given birth yet. And then once they give birth, they're called sows.
Sal?
Sow, S-O-W.
Sows. Okay. Oh, all this farm terminology. This is so fun. Oh
So I
my,
did get
how
a
these
sow, and she is was great. And I raised her. We ended up butchering her when she was about a year old, which was really emotional for me actually.
I
But
remember
it's
hearing
good
about that.
experience. But it was just kind of it was difficult because it was my first animal that I had like raised and butchered on my farm myself. Besides birds, I mean I've butchered 50 chickens myself. I've butchered
Huh.
turkeys. And I grew up hunting and like processing birds a lot. Like my dad used to bring
Mm.
home birds. So I can process fish, I can process birds, but I never have like grown mammal and butchered it myself, and I knew it needed to happen, and I was really excited about filling my freezer with all of that organic meat and everything, but it still
Oh,
kind of was an emotional experience. But they came, there's a guy in my neighborhood that he owns a mobile butchery business, and so they come to your yard. The animal never has to leave the place that they're comfortable with, that they grew up, like, because most of the meat that we eat, they get transported onto a big truck, and then they're transported to like a USDA facility, and it's scary and
Mm,
stressful, and they don't know where they're at,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so I think this is just an easy way for them. Like, they come and they do it on your property, they dispatch them, and then they actually process and do everything on your property, and then
That's so smart. What a cool, wow. That's
yeah.
amazing. I love all these alternative ways of like doing things. I think we're so smart as humans, right? Like it's like this just feels right, you know?
Yeah,
That's
it's
so
it's
cool.
really fulfilling. And it's definitely being more like emotionally connected to your food and like where it's coming from, and like
Yeah.
this, like why God put animals on this earth and the purpose of animals and our connection to them, and like the mutual, like they're feeding us and we're feeding them, and I think it's just a really, like, farm life is just a really humbling experience for adults and for kids. Like, I mean, kids growing up, like my daughter growing up with all these things, I feel like has really exposed her to, like, she's been exposed to death, like when chicks die, or when predators come and eat her chicks that she raised, and like the circle of life, and she's seen all these animals give birth, and she has no problem with birth, and like, it's just a really uh, educational experience for kids, and having them even be involved in like the butchering process. It's just good for us to to know, be connected to all of these uh, all of these experiences. But I don't know what I'm trying to say with that. But
So I have so many questions. So I agree with that so much. I think that there was this show, it was called Mindfield, and it was talking about death and how so removed we are from death. Like there's in the Puritan times, they would, if they knew someone was about to pass, they would build the casket, dig the ground. So it was like David Kessler, he's like a grief therapist. He's super, super famous. He co-authored the five stages of grief, that we all the yeah. So he's like grief expert. And he's like, forgot what, oh, there's like anticipatory grief. And a lot of us don't really kind of experience that, right? Like, oh, this is going to happen everywhere. And he's so funny. He's like, guys, I've checked the stats. We're all gonna die. Like
Mhm.
it's gonna happen. And I think that concept of like watching things die as the natural process of life, what do you think it's teaching your daughter?
I think it sounds really weird, and it might sound morbid to some people, but there's a sense of peace that comes with it, because um, and just a sense, just kind of like a practicality and a toughness that I think, like, when you talk to old farmers and you're like, these are some tough people. And it's not because they're like tough, like they're mean or they're hard-hearted. It's just, you just have kind of a practical understanding of life. And
Hmm.
you do experience a lot of like grief and loss, and you work so hard. And I'm not a farmer, but I am on a small scale. I mean, I do raise my own animals, and you
Girl,
know,
you're a farmer to me.
I'm a small scale farmer, and it is really emotional. Like, I've cried so much over my animals, like things that
Yeah,
happen, and
yeah, I know.
people are like, "Oh, how can you pour your heart and soul into these animals and then just eat them?" And it's like, well, maybe you just don't understand. Like, you really don't understand, uh, because there's so much like love and respect, and like I have, it's just kind of a mutual understanding that you build with animals. And let me think about where I'm sorry, I'm having to gather my thoughts here for a minute, but it
Yeah,
is a sense of peace, which is in a weird way, because you do experience a lot of grief and a lot of emotions.
yeah.
But I've felt myself be a little bit more, be able to withstand things in life better now, and I think Ismina too.
Mhm.
Like, she kind of has this understanding of like, okay, like she knows where our meat comes from. Like she'll ask me, she's like, "Oh, are we gonna have Moomoo's bacon today?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And we eat it, and like she knows where our eggs come from, and she knows where our bacon comes from, and it's just a really good feeling,
Yeah.
knowing that we.
I wonder how much of that understanding. She's like, oh, our food is coming from this animal, and there's almost even this like portioning, like kind of a natural portioning where it's not like this gluttony that American, the American diet has become is this like eat everything in sight, more, right? Rather than
But
just
the
like,
other side of that is just throw it in the garbage because you have no appreciation for it. You know,
yeah, right.
like it
So
almost breaks my heart to see people throw away a steak. I'm like, oh, like the work that went into that like that was,
oh, because you could put it in a compost? Is that kind of what you mean?
well, I
Like,
mean, just for like a farmer raised that cow. That cow spent 10 months growing and then sent to a butcher and then like the life process of that cow.
yeah,
And this is random. So, but it was because went out to eat for my birthday last year, and we went to this nice restaurant,
yeah.
and ordered a steak. Me and my husband ordered steaks, and oh, it was teppanyaki.
Oh, yum.
Yeah, like I remember, and you're at the table with everybody,
Yeah,
and the guys in next to us, there was a couple next to us, and I remember he ordered like a steak or a filet mignon or something, and I remember I was kind of peeking over, and he was like, "This is so gross, like they cooked it wrong or whatever," and I get it, like not if something isn't how you want it, like but I remember he took like one bite, and that steak was just sitting there, and he was like, "Nah, I can't eat it." And it kind of hit me in the gut because I had just processed like 50 meat birds. And so I just know, and I also ordered like half a cow from a person down the road. And so I was like, oh, this is like a stab in the heart to know that like this animal lived and died to like get on the table and then it's just going in the garbage.
oh, yeah. Yeah,
What
like
a
this.
waste.
Wait, yeah. Can I play devil's advocate? Because I love hearing your side of this. Here's where I'm coming from, and don't hate me. So I, a part of me thinks this animal is meant to live and die, right? That body will either be used or it won't be, right? Depending on where it grows or if it was with humans or even just in the wild, right? So, like, it will die. And depending on if someone consumes it or not, it's kind of like the circle of life that you were talking about.
I
What
mean,
are your thoughts on that?
sense, yeah. Like I will say there's a difference between, I mean, I guess let me put it this way, like my brain thought, and I'm not saying this guy is terrible, like, oh, what a
No,
terrible person. I
no,
just
no.
don't think we like I kind of my point was like we just aren't connected to like the value really of our food. And so
Yeah. And the
and
labor and all the things that went into that food being there.
being there on your plate. And like for example, my dad and my brothers like they get a deer tag every year. Like when you go out and you hunt and you're in the woods for weeks hunting for a deer and like all of the emotions around it, like you're scouting spots, you poured your heart and soul into like your equipment and you're out in nature and just the whole experience of bagging a deer is
Yeah.
is incredible and so rewarding and then not only that but after you get the deer or the elk or this animal you have to go down there you have to field dress it you have to all the work of like dressing that deer, loading it onto like if you have mules or horses, or you're gonna carry it back. Like a lot of dudes just carry it back themselves, like put it on it's so much work. And then you take
Wow.
it and you're gonna take that deer and you're gonna send it to the butcher and you're gonna take all that meat and then you're gonna fill your freezer with it. It's like, are you gonna waste that deer meat? Hell no. Like,
Yeah, you're gonna be very careful and um, conscious of all the work that went into it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. So for people that are like interested in homesteading and all of that, like what are your tips and your hot takes? Like what from the perspective of a homesteader, like why did you homestead? What tips and tricks would you give people?
I would say,
Hello.
Follow your heart, do what you feel passionate about, seek advice from other people that are also um, doing the things, like find mentors. And there's something to be said for just finding, thank you, sweetheart. My daughter's our assistant on our podcast right
Yes.
now.
She's so cute. She's like showing us her little unicorn.
There's something to be said for forging your own path and, learning from experience. But I also think find mentors. Don't be afraid to ask questions because you're not going to know everything. You're going to be pushed out of your comfort zone. Like I have to castrate my own pigs, and I have to, like, there's like the beautiful kind of Instagram side of it, and there's a lot of really rewarding things about homesteading, but it's also a lot of work. And so if you're not passionate about it, don't do it. But if you are passionate about it, and don't let people discourage you from doing it, even though like, oh, it's so much work. If you really are, if you have a passion for something, then you should do it, like by all means.
Yeah,
And
great.
just find your people and find a mentor if you
Oh, I love that. Yes. So, I'm so sad we're out of time. I have so many
can.
millions and millions of questions. So, for the why, like, if you were to make a case for people to homestead, what would it be? Like, why should people homestead?
I have 1 minute. Okay. I know I wish I had more time to make the case for homesteading. Ooh, that's kind of a deep question. Yes, remember why you're doing it. Uh, if you feel like any push or passion for questioning why the food system is the way it is, uh, why, in general as a culture, as many cultures, especially in North America and United States, like why we're so unhealthy and why we're consuming the things we are. Oh, kids truly keep us humble, don't they?
Oh, yes, they do. Yes,
Anytime
yes.
you're trying to have wax philosophical, they're like, "Mom, I need to poop." Getting real deep over here, and she's like, "Did you want me to finish that question real fast? Redo it?"
Yes, it's okay if we go a little over. I'm just gonna message her really quick.
This has been fun. I feel like, oh yeah.
I'm like, girl, I feel like I'm just barely scratching the surface on this homestead thing. Like there's so much here. You are so knowledgeable. God. Okay. All right. So yeah, the question was, like what if someone was interested in homesteading, like what, how would you make a case for homesteading?
Are we recording?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, I'll edit it later.
okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm making you edit a lot.
No, it's okay.
The case for homesteading. I would say if you have any interest in our food system, why things are the way they are, the more you start scratching and digging, maybe the more interested in homes. Careful, it's a slippery slope. The more interested you may get. Some things may shock you about our food system, about the way things are. I would say a person that I really admire and kind of like a resource that helped me in my homesteading journey was Joel Salatin. And he's authored a few books. Like he's got like You Can Farm, Raising Meat Chicken. He's got some really, really great resources. You may know him from, what was that documentary about food? There was a really, really popular documentary about food about 10 years ago, about like Monsanto and that big
Oh,
one that,
Seeds of Death.
oh no, that's a good one too, though.
Yeah, I like that one.
Anyway, he's in a lot of food documentaries, but Joel Salatin is a really great resource, and he makes a great case for homesteading and has a lot of resources. Um, but I would say just if you feel pulled towards a lifestyle, it's probably for a reason. And so
Mm.
don't be afraid to lean into things. And also don't feel like you need to go 100% and go off grid and need to, butcher chickens in your backyard like I do. You can also take baby steps and take small steps to make yourself healthier and your family healthier. So
Yeah, yeah. I feel like when I knew you, your health was just like so important to you. And I remember I was even sick one time and you told me this like recipe to like help me get rid of it. And I made it at home. It was like, I don't
probably
know.
kefir cider.
Yeah, some like turmeric and cinnamon and all those things. And I was like, wow, like this, it's so fun to be almost independent of companies, making decisions for you. It's like kind of like you get to make your own decisions. And like, I feel like a lot of us don't know what's in our food or in our medicine. and it's fun to make your own, right? It's fun to make your own. It's nice to know where your food's coming from, what's in your food, and I feel like it's giving you that body autonomy. It's giving you that control of your health.
I 100% agree. And I definitely agree with that. I think that's a huge part of it. And even if you can't homestead or you don't feel like you have, can you hear her?
No.
Oh, okay, good. Or even if you can't homestead or you don't feel like you have what it takes or it's overwhelming to you. I mean, small steps. You can even like go to your farmer's market or look up and see if there's people around you in the area that are raising pigs, or maybe it's people that are raising cows, and buy from them instead of going to Walmart. You know what I mean? Like you can
Cool.
support people and local farms as well. So
I love that. I love that. I think if I'm being 1,000% honest, I think that's more my jam. Like, I don't know if I could do a whole homestead thing. Maybe I could do chickens. I don't know. One day I might do some chickens, but I think I would much rather just like support whoever's doing all that work and just like take my money. Like, here it is. I love that. Alaynia, thank you so much for coming on. Oh my goodness. Do you have any like blogs or any kind of social media where you post about your homesteading?
So I do have Instagram and Facebook. It was called Homegrown Farmette. I just
Ooh.
changed my name because we are no longer just a little farm. I did change my name. We were Homegrown Farmette, and I just recently, so this is really exciting, but we are actually starting a preschool in this spring, based out of our home, and it's called Growing Roots Farm School. And so that is the handle for my Instagram and my Facebook. And I'm really excited. So
Oh,
another website, my website is www.growingrootsfarmschool.com.
oh my God. I am so proud of you, my love. That is amazing. We have to have you on the podcast again about about homesteading and about your new preschool. Like that is amazing. I love all of my friends. My friends are like go-getters, like original thinkers, think outside the box people. And I love it so much. All right, babe. Well, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Healing with Haley. If you enjoyed this episode, I think you'll love my new 6-week coaching program. It's designed to help women embrace and love their bodies just as they are. Together, we'll explore your thoughts, meet them with compassion, and start releasing the ones that hold you back. Ready to start your journey to self-love? Join me and let's make this change together. Click the link in the podcast description below.